All right, thank you for tuning in to our Memberland Water Provider Annual Reporting Tutorial. I'm Jessie Fox.
And I'm Candy Cox.
And we'll be going through today on just some tips on how you can fill out your annual reports each year. The general agenda for our overview is to first provide you some information about the annual reporting process in general. We'll show you what a parcel change report looks like, and this is something that has to be looked at before you can start the annual reporting process itself. We'll show you what the annual report workbook looks like, talk about the process for filling that out, and Candy has some tips to increase efficiency for you when you go through and fill out the water use by parcel in those annual reports. Then we'll talk a little bit about how to finalize and submit your annual report back to the CAGRD, and we'll provide some additional information on some anomalies or strange things you might encounter when you're trying to enter your parcel level data, and some tips for how to do that. So first off, the GRD assists all of our Memberland water providers every year in determining how much excess groundwater was delivered to the parcels in their service areas. So it's very important for us to maintain open lines of communication with our water providers. So if you do have any contact information changes, any staffing changes on your end that we need to be aware of, please keep us informed of those changes so that we have all the information that we need to send the annual reports to you and communicate with your staff. Next, we'll kind of just say the general process for the annual reports, as I had mentioned earlier, was first to do a parcel change report and then to do the annual reporting process itself. After we do the annual reports, if anything comes up through our QA/QC process, we would send you an issues list. And then the final step is to provide an annual report summary to you. So we'll go through that in more detail now. The parcel change report is something that Candy will send you in January.
Yeah, as soon as it's ready.
As soon as it's ready. The idea here is that before we send you the annual report to fill out, which that's by parcel, water use by parcel, we want to make sure that our parcel numbers are in sync. So we look at the assessor's office parcel data and make sure that our database is the same as what the assessor has. And then if we have any changes that we need to notify the water provider of, that's the list that Candy will send out if necessary. At that point, we would expect that the water provider will go ahead and make changes to their system so that all of our parcels are matching before we start the annual report process.
Actually, it's just a year-to-year basis. So if you didn't update your parcel numbers for the previous years, you won't be matching up with ours. We're just going to tell you what changed for the previous year only.
Previous year only, okay. We do have a quick example of what that spreadsheet would look like. Candy would be sending you a sheet with potentially multiple tabs by subdivision. The first tab would be a summary of all the changes by subdivision. So in this example, we showed 3 different subdivisions who had parcel changes. We have a count, a summary of the number of parcels within that subdivision that were added, any that were changed or modified, and any that were deleted. And then do you want to talk about this? That annual AMDs means annual membership dues, and this is just a change in the count of who is eligible to be assessed an annual membership due.
But yeah, and it's kind of like a count of the number of parcels too. So we can see that the number of parcels in, like, for example, Festival Foothills went down by 14 parcels. So there's an actual change in the total number. It went down.
Okay. And then to show you an example on the individual tab of what the information we'd be providing, all of these parcels, and I'll just scroll up, have been added. So we're showing you in these columns that in 2015 there was no parcel information, and now since it's added, there's some new parcel information that we need you to make sure you have in your system as well. In this same subdivision, there were also 3 parcels that you would have had in your subdivision that have now been deleted.
Yeah, most likely those were the parent parcels, and they became the individual parcels to the right. So they were parcelized. And if you do not get a report, you can assume that there were no changes in parcel numbers for any of the subdivisions in your service area.
In the previous year, right? Just another quick example. This subdivision had, we've written the type of parcel change. It's a change in this case. So here you can see that this initial parcel number, for whatever reason, which Candy can explain, has been changed to a new parcel number. So this is a change. It wasn't an addition. It's still the same piece of land. Mm-hmm. This was a change to the parcel number that we need you to reflect in your system too.
Most likely they did a plat change and moved around some parcel numbers, so they don't keep the same parcel numbers. They assign new ones. So we have to update that in our system, and then we pass the information on to you to change in your system.
So that's all we have to show there. The next step, once all of the parcel numbers are consistent between your system and our system, we generate the annual report workbook that is sent to each water provider each January. We email it to the water providers, and we also expect confirmation that you've received that workbook. So if you can email Candy.
Mm-hmm. Just email back to me that you've received it. It's no big deal, but I keep all those emails so that we can confirm that it's been received instead of sending them out in certified mail like we've done in the past.
Good. So there's really three main sheets, although there's potentially a lot of subdivision tabs in that workbook that we sent. So I'll kind of go through quickly. We have pulled together a generic annual report workbook to show you. There's an instruction sheet first off. So let me pull up this one. This is what the first tab of the annual report workbook will look like. It's called instructions. It basically goes through stepwise on how to fill out your annual report. We'll be reiterating and talking through some of this today. But if there's anything on this instruction sheet that you find confusing or that you think is missing and you want to help us make it better, this is for you. So we'd appreciate any comments or feedback that you have on this first tab in particular. Next is our list of subdivisions sheet. This is really the summary sheet of all the subdivisions within the water provider service area. And this is something that you'll want to fill out last, and we'll go through that process shortly. And I'll show you that here. This is the summary list of all the subdivisions within this water provider. And then the next thing are these tabs. How come I can't change? Which I've labeled here as the individual subdivision sheets. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. There's one sheet provided for each subdivision, and you would need to fill these sheets in first with the water provider's water use data by parcel. No, I'm not. There it goes. So in this example, this is the first subdivision, and this is a CAGRD's number, but this will list all the parcels within that subdivision.
We went ahead and this one's filled out.
Oh yeah, I'll just click on the later one. This is really how it would look like when it's sent to you. The default is that it's already filled in with zeros, but Candy will walk through how you need to fill this in with the current year's water use. Next. There we go. Okay.
So the process for filling out the annual report, basically you want to match your parcel number with the parcel number on the annual report, which we've provided by subdivision. We need the total water and the total groundwater per parcel. Sometimes those are the same, but the default is 0. If the total water and the groundwater are different, then you must commingle your supplies, and we'll talk more about that So you'll want to match and fill in your water use data. Irrigation is a little bit different, and we can talk about that later too. It's probably not in this tutorial, is it? No, it's a lot more detailed, but it's important. We can put the information in manually. You can just type it in, or we can use the VLOOKUP function in Excel. It allows you to have two Excel spreadsheets and have one look to the other for the data and put it right into like our Excel spreadsheet. So you don't have to type it in. You do reduce the risk of typos, errors that way. But it does. A lot of time. Yeah, it saves a lot of time. But your data has to be your parcel numbers have to be match exactly with ours, dashes and no extra numbers or letters that we don't have. Your data must be already in 1,000 gallons. Now, it's not hard to convert that. If you have it in gallons, it's not hard to convert that in your data and then pull it over or convert it after it's been pulled over. But it would save you a lot of time, and we'd prefer that you use it for a number of reasons. If you can, and it'll help clean up your data, and it'll help identify maybe areas where your data is not matching up with ours and it still needs to be researched and reported on. Otherwise, those things are kind of hard to find. This is a snapshot of what the VLOOKUP function looks like, and I'll go through that real quick right now to show you how it works. So let's see. So what we have here is just a example of one of the annual reports that we would send out to you. Is this the one? Yeah, this is. So if you look on this, first of all, okay, so I went through one here. You can see where the data is already in here. It's no longer 0. But if you have information in here, like 85,000 acre feet, and this cell is blank, it's going to kick back an error over here. Right now it says okay, but if there's nothing in there, I don't know if that'll... Yeah, see how it says there's an error because it needs a reporting basis in there. So, and the error goes away. And then over here, if you see where this next one, there's no errors on the summary, but that's because there's no errors, and it's because there's been no deliveries in the previous year, so it's fine. That's maybe a clue. If you do have deliveries in this next year, you have to go ahead and put it in there, but it's looking at the previous year too and comparing. If there was deliveries in the previous year, we're expecting you're going to continue to have deliveries. So that's why this next one, I went ahead and put in information too. This is an example. If you did not match up parcel numbers with us and you use this VLOOKUP function, what's going to happen is you're going to get these errors. It's going to come back NA because we've got parcels that you didn't have. So it's going to kick back these errors, and every single one of these errors is going to have to be researched or replaced with something that does exist, or basically you need to find it in your system and update. So
We'll detail sort of more of the columns on this list of subdivisions next. But yeah, if you want to go to one of the individual subdivisions and show how. So yeah, this is the point Candy was saying, where you could just, if you had your parcel level water use somewhere else, you could just manually match up parcel to parcel to fill in these columns. But the VLOOKUP function, which Candy will show you now, will really make this whole process faster, since you probably have a lot of subdivision tabs that you're going to need to populate with water use data.
And even if you don't have a lot of subdivisions, just the fact that you don't have to worry about typos and as you're keying in information, What you'll do is you'll have both of your spreadsheets open, this spreadsheet and then the one that you're going to be pulling data from, like if you exported from your database to an Excel spreadsheet. So you'll have that.
We have an example of that open in the, you can click at the bottom.
Oops. It's
The next one.
this one. So that's what that could look like right there.
Yeah, you might have your water use data.
And if you notice that it starts in column C, I hid the first few columns that because you want your APNs to be in the leftmost column. So you don't have to delete anything, just hide them and it'll work just fine. But we're starting in column C with that. So
yeah, the VLOOKUP, the way that will show you how it functions, the column that you're searching for, the data that you're searching for always has to be in the leftmost column. And
where? Yeah, there. So how you do it is you click in the first column or the first cell that you want to start in. We're looking for this number on a different spreadsheet. So where is this? That's it, right? Go to the lookup.
If you're in the formulas tab, this is a lookup and reference formula. So on our version of Excel, we can find it under that drop down, but you might have to click on the top left, there's an insert function, and you can search for VLOOKUP there if your Excel version doesn't look like this.
So here's that window that pops up, and so what we want the lookup value to be is we want that to be the parcel number. So we'll click the A up here, and it types it in there. Then we click down to the next level. Now we want it to go to your where the table where the data is. So that is this one. So in here, what we do is we want it to look in this anywhere in here. We want it to start with the parcel number and end with the delivery information.
Which in this case, is in column H. That's where the usage in 1,000 gallons is. So you're just saying look in all of these columns, all 6 of these columns, basically, for the parcel number that matches the parcel number we already selected.
So any of the data within these 6 columns could be potentially pulled over. So
right.
Then down here, this column index, we know that was the 6th column within that data. We could pick 3 and pull over the address or whatever, but we want 6.
Because that's where the gallons, that's where the usage was, and that's the column we want to pull over.
And then we type false in here because we want the data in the first column to match exactly. We don't want it to just be close. We need it to match exactly. So
yeah, this shows that if you had written true or NA, it would do even not an exact match, just a kind of a close enough match, and that's what we need the parcel numbers to match exactly.
Right. So you can see right there, it pulled over the number 37. You can do a spot check if you want to, but we do know that that's the correct information. And then if you click on this little box right here in the corner, it'll fill in that same formula all the way down. So I don't know how many parcels there are, but that just really saved a whole lot of time right there. And then if you do not commingle, what I would recommend that you do, put an equal sign there and that previous cell and do the same thing and copy that down. So you have the same data in both columns. And I don't know if then what you have to do is go to your data and do a filter to find out. Did it do it?
Yeah, it's at the top.
I can't see. Oops. Did I get the?
Yeah.
Oh, I see it. Am I on it?
No, yeah.
There. Okay. So what I want to do then is not select all of them. I want to just go down here and just type it or just collect all the information for the NAs. These are all the ones. There's an error. So these are where we have a number that doesn't match up with your data. And what I'm going to do is highlight all of those. Oops, gosh dang it. Try again. Not that many. Okay. I want to highlight those. Give them a color. I'm going to highlight them yellow because those are all parcel numbers that need to be researched, and we need to find out. You need to find out why they don't match with our numbers. If you don't find out why they don't match with our numbers, what you'll get over here is an error. And it'll say there's errors in the schedule that you need to figure out before it'll give you an okay right there. So what you can do, like once you figure out the correct information, let's say that you've found out and now they're all corrected, then you could still leave them 0 if you want. I mean, leave them highlighted, but if once they get corrected and you go to did that fix them? It didn't. What happened?
You changed the filter. I think there was a different error as well. Just select all. And then look when you scroll down. If you scroll down, I still think there's some errors. Maybe not.
Let's see what happened over here. It says, oh, well, if we would read it, elected excess groundwater percent is just insufficient. So that's something we'll come back to later, but also something that you'll have to fix before we move on. So that's how the VLOOKUP works.
Yeah, and if you still have questions about that, we do want to recommend it so it's more efficient and, like Candy said, there's less errors. But let us know if you have questions about using it, because your data really do need to be set up in a way that can be referenced between the two sheets. So the parcel numbers really do have to be formatted the same, and we're happy to help you make that process more efficient. But you can also just find out more information online about how to use the VLOOKUP function as well.
It's really important too, because we require that all the parcels that we send to you, they need to be sent back to us with the correct data. So if it really shouldn't be 0, then we need to find out why it's 0. Basically, we ask too that if you've researched a parcel number because unstable usage last year it was lower than this year, we ask that you put whatever information you find out to the right of the parcel number in like the next open columns. For example, if there's a construction year but no water use, we want to know why. We will always send those back to you. Or if there's no house but water use, we're going to ask why. It could be something as easy as construction water or something like that, but we're going to ask why. Any comments that you have for us, the better it'll be. Oops, I wasn't supposed to do that. I was just supposed to click there.
Well, I was going to say we could show, real quickly. In this case, assuming these highlighted ones had errors, if you went and researched this and it's 0, this is what Candy means. You'll have access to these columns. And if you just went in and said construction water, or I mean, I know that would be water use, but put just a comment in here. We'll be able to see that when you send it back to us. And then when, like Candy said, if we're going to catch some of these anomalies or things that look strange during our QA/QC process, at least we have this comment that you've provided, that you've already researched it, and that'll save us time and you time, because if you've already looked into it, we'd like to know.
Yeah, and we send an issues list, and if I see on here that you've already answered that question, then I'm not going to put it on your issues list. Right. Only the ones that don't have comments that are off, I'm going to put on that list. If I've seen you've already researched it and you've already provided an answer, it'll just shorten your list.
Put it back here.
So if you go to then the that other back to the subdivision, yeah. So you can see in here. Oh, you were gonna do this.
You have to just scroll to the right. Here.
This information here.
That's still you have to move the thing to the.
Oh yeah, right.
There we go.
There. So here, show that's just
sure. So
years.
What we provided, I know Candy's clicked on this sheet a couple times, but now we just kind of want to walk through what this does after you've already input all the water use data in the individual subdivision sheets. You can come to this list of subdivisions. And again, she's already shown you that you can use these links to go to your individual tabs that we provided. And I think that's a time saver as well, especially if you have a lot of subdivisions. But what this sheet shows you is right here, these columns are 2015 delivery data and the Comingle Factor from 2015. And we just provide this for reference so you can compare between last year's data and this year's. So all of these columns are for 2016. And the potable and irrigation use will be filled in after these will be auto-populated, as you can see these ones are. After you've filled in the individual subdivision sheets, this just provides a summary of what you've provided.
I want to point out too, can you highlight the irrigation? Those columns right there. Every subdivision has irrigation columns, but they're always hidden. So if you have irrigation water delivered to the subdivision, you'll have to manually unhide those on the individual sheets, and it'll automatically show up here, but you'll have to unhide them. Otherwise, you'll call me and say, how do I enter irrigation?
So these usually are hidden?
They're always, no, it's not hidden on this. It shows up on this. It's hidden on the individual tabs.
Oh, okay.
Always hidden right there. You can see there's a...
Yeah, something missing right here.
Mm-hmm. And there they are.
Okay.
But every subdivision has them in there.
So the next... I'll hand it to Candy. The two main columns that you're going to need to fill in on this sheet are, first of all, the Comingle Factor for 2016, all the way through all the subdivisions, and also the elected groundwater percent. This is another column you need to fill in for us for each subdivision. And then the only other one that you need, and these ones are for reference, the years to deplete groundwater allowance balance. Candy will describe that. Those are reference columns. And same thing with the data validation. That's another reference column for you. But these are the two columns that you primarily need to fill in on this sheet after you've completed all the individual subdivision tabs so that the rest of the data is auto-populated in here.
Okay, so this commingle factor, basically, it's what we're asking for. If you commingle your water supplies, you have other surface water supplies in addition to pumping groundwater. So when those of you that got the NIA supply, if or when that's ever available to be delivered, you'll have a percentage, a commingle factor percentage put in here. It does not automatically calculate when you put it in here. So you'll have to do the calculation here. But what we're looking at is if whatever you've put in those columns, we're going to look here and see if that's what you put for your commingle factor. It should work out that way. Good. So that's what we're looking for there.
And this would be the percentage of, so let's say if you had a surface water supply that was also being delivered to this subdivision, this will be the percent of surface water being delivered, not the percent of groundwater.
Right.
So if 60% of their supplies delivered are surface water, you'll type 60 in this column for that subdivision.
And that'll make your groundwater supply 40% and your surface water or other supplies 60, right? Okay, so then the next fun thing is this excess groundwater percent. And we've talked a lot about that over last year and this year. What you see here is the minimum. So in our database, it automatically puts in a minimum. If the subdivision enrolled before 2004, then the minimum dropped to 0. Otherwise, it was 66.67% or 2/3. So newer subdivisions will still have that 2/3 percent in here. This elected column needs to be this number or higher. and it depends. It's dependent on the year it enrolled and the amount of groundwater allowance balance. So when we got this error right here, what it was telling us is there was only 6,000 gallons of
water use
of water that in the groundwater allowance balance. So not water. There was only 6,000 gallons of groundwater allowance. So what we're looking for here is we try to put it out at about 10 years, basically, because we don't want a homeowner to be shocked if we use up all their groundwater allowance balance in 1 year, and then the next year they have to pay 100%. Basically, this is saying, I look at it as the percentage is the amount of replenishment the homeowner is going to be responsible for paying. So, if we're looking for about 10 years out, let's say, and you can play with this number too and see what it does to the depletion, years to depletion column. Right now, that at 0%, it doesn't even cover the whole year. That's why we get the error. But let's say that we put in 60%. That's still not enough. Maybe this was a bad one to do. Oops, I'm probably gonna, how much? Let's do, yep, still not enough. It's gonna have to be 100%, probably, to get rid of the error. So maybe not 100%. We can play with it and, yeah, it's gotta be there. No, still not enough, huh? The error's still there. Yeah, it's got to be 100%. Anyway, it's probably not the best example, but you can play with that number until the error goes away, and then this will upload automatically into our system and change that so that it's correct, and it uses the groundwater allowance balance as needed. So
yeah, so as the water provider, you really have the responsibility of determining, especially in the case of this example sheet where there is no minimum excess groundwater percentage, you have the responsibility of determining how much of the groundwater allowance you'd like to use that year versus reporting the water use as excess to the CAGRD. And so the columns P and Q, the years to deplete, are just kind of an example. It's just illustrative for you to see how many years, if the groundwater use by that subdivision were the same as it was this year, what you're reporting this year, how many years so you would basically draw down that balance if you were to use 50% this year or 25%. So we would encourage providers to take a look at what the groundwater allowance balance is, and if there is no minimum excess groundwater percent, to consider how much you might want to use that year. Because like Candy said, if you're not using any of the groundwater allowance balance, that really doesn't serve you to save that all through time, but you might want to save it across the years just so there isn't any sort of steep increase or decrease in the water bill for that for those parcels within that subdivision.
And all that's saying is it's not a supply of water. It's just where the Department of Water Resources has said that this is the amount of groundwater pumped that doesn't require replenishment. That's all it is. It's not a supply of water, really. It doesn't belong to anybody. It's just, it doesn't require replenishment.
Right. So if we go back to the PowerPoint really quickly, I think we might have some more. We can just reiterate some of this. We showed you the columns that provided the previous year's data for reference. And then again, the current year summary by subdivision is automatically calculated once the individual subdivision tabs are completed. The first thing that we pointed out and highlighted was that you'd need to fill in that Comingle Factor. And again, that's only if you're a water provider who's delivering a mix of water supplies to the customers within that subdivision, if you're delivering something other than groundwater. And if the water provider delivers commingled supplies, that percentage, as we said, is the percent of the delivery supply that it's surface water.
Also, if you purchase a groundwater supply from another provider or somebody else, it still gets put in this as surface water on your report. The person that you bought it from, the entity you bought it from, they have to call it groundwater on their end, but you call it surface water. So that's just for information.
Yeah, because that won't be a supply that you'll potentially need to replenish.
Right. It's still considered a purchased supply of water, so.
And again, if you don't commingle water, that's the way we provided the spreadsheet to you already has 0 in that column, and so that's a column that you could ignore. As we showed here. And we also, again, provide what the Comingle Factor was that you reported to us in 2015 as well, just for your reference. Candy also went over the excess groundwater percent column. Again, the minimum is automatically calculated through our database, so that will be provided if there is a minimum, depending on the year that you enrolled. And the elected must be filled in for the provider for each subdivision. If not, as Candy showed, you'll have some errors on the side in that data validation column. And then the years to depletion that we showed, that's new this year. We provided that last year to a lot of folks, but this year we have it permanently included as part of this workbook. And so
it just helps you to be able to determine what that percentage should be based on how many years it would take to deplete that groundwater allowance balance. So if that groundwater allowance balance is going to last you 150 years, you can go ahead and report 0% probably for quite a while without worrying about it. But every year you get the opportunity to revisit that number.
Right. And then as we had showed you on that sheet as well, there's the data validation column on the right. You'll get a green message that says okay if that subdivision is good to go. We showed you the example of the red error where something needs to be corrected. And then I'll also show you that this is just kind of how it starts out. There's a warning in this case because we haven't filled in the individual subdivision data yet. But the warnings are shown in yellow, and that just is informational for you. There's different unique warnings for different situations. So just refer to this column and read what it says to see if you can fix that.
Mitigate a problem but the warnings basically are just saying, are you sure that this is correct because the previous year you reported water or didn't report water. Yeah, did something different, and is that correct? But the red errors you absolutely have to correct before you move on. And the green are good.
Yeah, and for this one, as Candy said earlier, it says unresolved errors in schedule, and that does mean that you need to go to this individual subdivision and take care of these errors. That's the schedule it's referring to.
So your annual report needs to be submitted no later than March 31st of the year. It needs to have the certification signed by the authorized person. It needs to be submitted with it. Once we receive it and go through and look for errors and anomalies, we're going to provide you with an issues list. You have to research and maybe send somebody out to look at the property or find out what the issue is with that delivery amount. You have to send it back on the same spreadsheet with the corrections and any comments or anything that you found out from your research. We've had water providers say that they had a broken meter, so they changed that out. They have no idea how long the meter was running incorrectly, which could cost them money. Or we've had a whole number of things come back. So it really is to your benefit to really look at these and find out what's wrong.
Yeah, we want to help make this, make all the reporting as accurate as we can, mainly so that we're not billing incorrectly for the cost of replenishment to the individual customers. So this is the portion where we get into some of the I guess you could say anomalies or just things you may come across when you're trying to enter the water use data by parcel.
And if you have the same parcel number that shows up in a number of different subdivisions, what we need to know is, did you add up all the water delivery for that one parcel and put it in one subdivision, or did you divide it up evenly? Or we basically just need to know how you reported on that. And if you do that, then we won't come back and ask. We especially will come and ask you if it's inconsistent with previous years, how you've reported it. So in addition to that, if you've got a customer that you had move in, move out, we need to make sure that you've reported for the water deliveries for the entire year and not just for the last customer that you had in your system. Those usually come up if there's low water delivery reported on our reports. We question that and say, is this correct? Because did you add up everybody's deliveries for the year, or was it just the last person? The more information that you provide, the better, and then it requires us to ask you questions, and it eliminates us having to ask the questions later.
Another situation that is more recent that you might encounter is if you're a water provider who is delivering recovered long-term storage credits to some of your customers. We've had this situation where there's an HOA who has purchased long-term storage credits, and they're recovering and then wheeling those credits to to the parcels within that HOA. If that's the case, this, on the one hand, this is really an example of another commingled supply. So what we require in this exact situation is that the water provider submit a copy of the wheeling agreement between the HOA and the water provider. You'll also submit separately as an attachment to your report a list of the parcels who received those recovered long-term storage credits. So we'd need to see a list of the parcel numbers and the volume received by each parcel. And then you'll need to remember in the individual subdivision tab of the annual report workbook that this would be a reason why your total water and your total groundwater numbers are different. So for each of those parcels who received recovered long-term storage credits, make sure that their total water is greater than their total groundwater, and the difference will be the number of long-term storage credits recovered and wheeled to those parcels. But we still do request that you submit us a separate list, as we mentioned here, of the parcels that received those recovered credits. So this is a new procedure for us, and we'd appreciate, again, same sort of thing. The more information you can provide us, the better. But again, this is another example of a commingled supply and some additional information that we'll need. I think that's really all we had for today. As always, please contact us with any questions that you have. Keep us informed of any staffing changes that we need to be aware of on your end.
We'll be more than happy to work with the new person to help train them in how to do our annual reporting. So if you let us know, then we can make those accommodations. All the data that you submit needs to be in 1,000-gallon volumes. We don't have the capability right now of receiving it in acre feet, although our database does convert it to acre feet. It uploads it in gallons, so we need to receive it back in gallons. If you have like golf course information that gets reported in acre feet, you need to convert it to gallons before submitting it to us. Any comments that you have for parcels that you've researched is greatly appreciated, and will save you probably time and effort looking them back up the second time around. So we appreciate you looking at those and like heading it off up front, so we don't have to put them on a list later. So that helps us help you.
And that's all we have. We've listed our contact information, but you can always go to www.cagrd.com to find out any of our contact information. and be in touch. Let us know if you have any additional questions or if there's anything else, any other information that we can provide you.
Thank you very much.